In the summer of 1845, two ships slipped quietly away from the coast of England. They carried enough provisions to last years. They carried the latest technology of their age. They carried 129 men. They were not expected to return quickly. They were expected to succeed. Their destination lay far to the north, where maps thinned and certainty faded. The ships were called Erebus and Terror, and after they vanished into the Arctic, none of the men aboard were ever seen alive again. The expedition was led by Sir John Franklin, a veteran naval officer with decades of polar experience. He was nearing 60, an age that spoke not of recklessness, but of caution earned through survival. The goal was clear: to chart the last unknown section of the Northwest Passage, to connect the Atlantic and Pacific through ice and silence. Britain had attempted this before. Always the ice had refused, but this time felt different. The ships had been reinforced with iron plating. They were equipped with steam engines, adapted from railway locomotives to assist when winds failed. They carried canned food, newly developed, modern, sealed against decay. The men were trained. The confidence was quiet, not boastful. When the ships were last seen by European eyes, they were moving steadily westward into Baffin Bay. After that, there was only ice. For 2 years, nothing was heard. This was not unusual. Polar expeditions often vanished from correspondence for long stretches. But by 1848, concern grew. Search parties were dispatched. They scoured coastlines. They questioned Inuit communities. They found nothing. Years passed. More expeditions followed. Each returned with fragments. A note here, a rumor there. The silence deepened. Then, in 1859, more than a decade after the ships had sailed, a message was discovered on King William Island. It was written on a standardized naval form. The handwriting was careful. The words were restrained. It explained everything and nothing. The note revealed that the Erebus and Terror had become trapped in ice in September of 1846. Sir John Franklin had died the following year. The ships had remained frozen in place for months, then years. By April of 1848, the surviving crew, 105 men, had abandoned the ships. They intended to walk south. They were already starving. This was the last written record. What followed had to be reconstructed slowly. Inuit testimony described sightings of men dragging sledges across the ice, thin, exhausted, moving without urgency, as though already resigned. Some accounts spoke of bodies along the route. Others described camps where food had been prepared. Bones were found years later. They bore marks of cutting, not chaotic, deliberate. Evidence suggested that in the final stages, the men had consumed the dead. The conclusion was not sensational. It was practical. They had reached the edge of endurance. The Arctic did not punish them suddenly. It wore them down. Modern examination of remains uncovered other truths. Lead poisoning was widespread. The solder used to seal the canned food had leached into the meals. Cognitive impairment followed. Judgment failed. Simple decisions became difficult. Even so, the men continued. They wrote. They organized. They followed naval discipline until it no longer mattered. What remains striking is not the suffering. It is the order. The ships were not abandoned in panic. The march south was planned. The note was updated. Crosses were not carved. No distress signals were raised. The expedition dissolved slowly, step by step, into the ice. For more than a century, the ships themselves were lost. Then in 2014, Erebus was found. It rested upright on the seabed, preserved by cold and darkness. 2 years later, Terror was discovered as well. Its condition was even more remarkable. Doors were closed, windows intact. The ship appeared ready to sail again, as though the crew had stepped away only briefly. The Arctic had not destroyed them. It had kept them. The Franklin expedition did not fail because of one mistake. It failed because of accumulation, cold, isolation, technology trusted too deeply, confidence carried too far into silence. Sir John Franklin was buried somewhere beneath the ice. Most of his men were not buried at all. They remain part of the landscape. Their story is not one of sudden catastrophe. There was no single night when everything ended. Instead, there were many small endings. A fire that could not be lit, a decision made too late, a step taken when strength was already gone. The Arctic does not shout. It does not chase. It waits. The ships are still there. The ice still forms and breaks around them. And the passage they sought has since been crossed many times. Quietly, without triumph. The Franklin expedition reminds us that disappearance does not always arrive as violence. Sometimes it arrives as endurance stretched too long, as certainty carried too far, as men walking steadily into white distance, leaving behind paper, leaving behind tools, leaving behind a silence that still holds. And in that silence, the expedition remains. Not lost, not found, simply still.